Hello, everybody. Welcome to a medium-sized lesson on introduction paragraphs. I'm going to kind of read through all 3 steps you can take to make your introduction paragraph. Feel free to pause whenever you need to, and make sure that you are submitting work for my review as you are asked. Okay? So the introduction paragraph. The introduction paragraph does just what it is called. It introduces the essay. It is a very important paragraph in the essay because it makes the first impression. Introduction has 3 goals. The first one is to grab the reader's attention. Remember that your reader is an academic in the field of literary study, me. So this person, me, has probably read many, many essays on your piece of literature, and I have. How will you attract attention to your argument? The second purpose or goal is to establish context. It is important that your reader knows the specific authors and pieces of literature being analyzed right from the beginning so that the reader is not confused. It is also important to introduce the big ideas of your essay at the beginning that will be narrowed in the thesis statement. The third goal is to simply communicate the argument. The reader needs to know your specific argument, aka your thesis statement, which we worked on last lesson, because this focuses the reader's purpose for reading your essay. There are 3 parts to the introduction paragraph that accomplish these goals: the attention grabber, the transition, and the thesis statement. So if we were to graphically represent the shape of the introduction paragraph, it would form an upside down triangle because introduction paragraph goes from broad to specific as follows. Okay, the attention grabber, your transition, and then your thesis. The attention grabber pulls the reader into the essay. The transition segues between the attention grabber and the thesis statement. It introduces the broad ideas of the essay. The thesis statement presents the focused argument of the essay and narrows the broad ideas of the transition into more specific ideas that will be discussed further in the body paragraphs of the essay. I don't need you to worry about this homework because you are already working on your intros. You've got the graphic organizer you can use. If you want me to take a look at your introduction, I'm more than happy to, but it's not necessary for you to do that, okay? So, step 1, making your attention grabber. For this activity, I want you to read the following sample attention grabbers. Then experiment with 3 of the strategies by drafting 3 different attention grabbers for your essay. After you've drafted those 3 different options, select one to use for your introduction and revise your introduction paragraph accordingly. So here's a quotation. You can begin with a quotation that relates to the claim or your theme statement. So Siddhartha Gautama once said, "Happy is he who has overcome his ego." Or are you happy? These are 3 words that change Guy Montag forever. You can start with an anecdote. Begin with a brief story that relates to your essay. So maybe a murderous barber returns to London to enact revenge on the man that took his family. He joins forces with a woman who makes pies out of corpses, the corpses of the people who come in for haircuts and shaves, and they sing, "This is Sweeney Todd." You can use imagery. Begin with a strong image, or strong imagery, engaging the 5 senses, that paints a picture in the reader's mind. It is a dark, coyote howling night. The wind screeches as tree branches dance in the gusts and snow falls swiftly to the ground. Among the darkness, a single light pierces the deathly chill. The single light of an isolated ghost town. It is the light of a mansion that was built over 100 years ago, and vines from a nearby tree have entombed the towering edifice. The owner of the mansion sneaks quietly to her underground dungeon, only to hear the imprisoned screams of a man trapped behind the walls. Her face, still hidden by the shadows, releases a maniacal laugh. This is the stuff of the Gothic genre. You can also have background information, which begins with relevant background on an author's life, a literary movement, a time period, or historical event that relates to the essay. You can have flashing images, begin with a series of single words related to the story for impact. So moose fighter, treasure winner, boast maker. The epic hero Beowulf epitomizes the glory of the Anglo-Saxon people. And then you can have also contrast as an attention grabber. Begin with a contrasting image that relates to the claim of the thesis statement. So the world state motto, community, identity, stability. However, Brave New World shows that The world state only creates isolation, opposition, and chaos. Contrasts and tension grabbers I really like them. They provide a lot of intrigue and really draw us in. It doesn't mean that you have to use them. It's just when I write essays, I like to use this style. That doesn't mean you have to, though, okay? You can also use parallel structure. This is another style that I like. I find myself using it quite often. Use this rhetorical device, which is a repeated grammatical pattern, usually in threes, to pull the reader into your essay. So Brutus murders his leader for love of country, for love of self, and for love of power. So if you notice this, we've got anaphora here, repetition of that phrase. This is the essential crisis of William Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar. So parallel structure is when you're using the same form repeatedly in your writing. You can use ambiguity. Use purposeful ambiguity to get the reader asking who, what, when, where, and why. So an example, he had always been there for his son, even when his son's outbursts made other people nervous and afraid. He had always been the one his son could trust to protect him against the scary world. But when he murdered the neighbor's dog with a pitchfork, everything changed, and Christopher Boone could no longer trust his father. So we are asking these questions: who, what, when, where, why, right? What's going on here? Why can't he trust his father? Why did he murder the dog? Why did the son's outbursts make people nervous and afraid? Draws us in. You can use a simile or a metaphor. So remember, simile is a comparison using like or as, and metaphors are direct comparison to make a concept clear for the reader. So for example, like a power-hungry traitor, Macbeth murders his king and sparks his own dread downfall and destruction. Or Macbeth is a power-hungry traitor who murders his king and sparks his own downfall and destruction. So we can see here that just uses the like, and that uses direct comparison, so simile and metaphor. Or a startling statement. Use a startling statement that relates the story to dramatize the introduction. So, for example, a bleeding poodle stabbed to death with a pitchfork stuck into the ground in the neighbor's yard, a sight that changes 15-year-old Christopher Boone forever. It gives a little bit of drama. It startles us. It is a stark image, and it draws us in. It engages us. Makes us want to read more. Now it's your turn. Try out 3 different attention-grabbing strategies in the space provided below. Refer back to your introduction paragraph draft as needed. Now, I didn't ask you to submit that, but you can, if you have a draft, you can refer back to it, or you can just kind of start your first draft by looking at these 3 different strategies. Okay, so this is for your own essay, not for the ones. Don't worry about any of the sentences that came before. Those are just good examples. I want you to use 3 different strategies to create attention-grabbing hooks or statements for your own essay. Don't worry about the homework because we're doing this, through distance. What I want you to do is share your attention grabbers with me through a chat. Okay, so please do that. I hope to see all 3 of these so that I can give feedback. And again, make sure you're on the right track. I don't want you to do this incorrectly. I want you to get a good mark. So let me give you some feedback along the way. Step 2 is the transition. The transition is the most difficult part of the introduction paragraph to write. It is the filler space between the attention grabber and the thesis statement. So how do you get from point A, the attention grabber, to point C, the thesis statement? Take a look at the following sample introduction paragraph to see how these students did just that, and then answer the questions that follow each one. Each introduction paragraph is ratiocinated according to the following key. So the attention grabber is in bold, the transitions in italics, and the thesis statement is underlined. I'm not going to read these student samples out loud to you. I feel like maybe I'm doing that too much, so you can read them on your own, making sure that you understand the different text features there. But the questions: how does the student transition from point A, the attention grabber, to point C, the thesis? And what is the relationship between the 3 parts of this introduction paragraph? And the same questions are for student sample number 2. So once you have read these 2 introductory paragraphs, answer these questions, and then, let me know what you're thinking. Again, put it in the chat. I know that we're not necessarily having class conversations because this isn't a full-on lecture. So I want to make sure that you understand how an introduction works by showing me what you're thinking about these paragraphs, okay? So let me know somehow. Answer these questions with me somehow. It can be over a phone call or through a text chat, whatever works. And then you've got a third sample here too. If you have a draft of your introduction, see if you can maybe rework it to follow this sort of structure here. If you don't have a draft introduction, I think now is a good chance for you to start working on that, thinking about the attention grabber, the transition, and the thesis, using the information in this handout and in your graphic organizer. Step 3 is putting the introduction together. So now it's time to put the whole thing together. As I said at the end of your second activity, see if you have a draft. If you don't have a draft, here's your chance to do it. Include your attention grabber, your transition, and your thesis statement. It should be 3 to 6 sentences in length. I'm hoping more towards the 6 sentences, please. 3 sentences at this point in your writing career is not enough. Write the 3 parts: attention grabber, transition, thesis. If you are confident that you are on the right track, I don't need to see this. If you think you might need some support or you want me to review it, please send it to me. After you have done your draft here, or you've reworked your draft here, reflections, questions come next. So which attention grabber did you use? How did you make your selection? And how is your attention grabber related to your thesis? How did you transition between the attention grabber and the thesis? And what are you trying to prove in your essay? And again, if you think you're on the right track, I don't necessarily need to see these questions here, but they are good for you to think about to make sure that you have a strong introduction crafted, okay? I'm always here for feedback if you want me to give some, but unless I've specifically asked for it, you don't need to. So that's it for your introduction. Thank you guys. I look forward to seeing what you are creating for your essays.